западные земли Украины. Ну, мы же знаем все, как Украина получила это. Сталин отдал после Второй мировой войны. Отдал часть польских земель, Львов и так далее, сколько там, несколько областей крупных, там 10 миллионов человек проживает. Чтобы не обижать поляков, компенсировал их потери за счет Германии. Отдал восточные земли Германии, Данцигский коридор, да и сам Данциг. Часть отобрал у Румынии, часть у Венгрии. Все отдал туда, в Украину. Это и люди, которые там живут, многие, во всяком случае, я знаю это наверняка, 100%, они хотят вернуться на свою историческую родину. А те страны, которые потеряли эти территории, и прежде всего Польша, спят и видят вернуть. В этом смысле только Россия могла быть гарантом территориальной целостности Украины. Не хотят? Не надо. История все расставит на свои места. Мы мешать не будем, но свою не отдадим. Вот что все должны понять. И в Украине те, кто агрессивно настроен в отношении России, и в Европе, и в Соединенных Штатах. Хотят договариваться, пусть договариваются, но только исходя, мы будем делать, исходя из наших интересов.
This is my video update on this Wednesday, midday, December the 20th. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with the Defense Ministry board meeting that took place yesterday with Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu in attendance, and they both made some very interesting statements. And we'll start with the Russian president and what he said, and then we'll talk about what Shoigu, the defense minister, said. And I think the statement that has everyone talking from Putin is when he talked about the west of Ukraine. Basically, what Putin said is that Poland sleeps and sees how to recuperate the lands that were given to Ukraine in reference to the west of Ukraine. And Putin said that Russia will not interfere, but we will not give up ours. Putin went on to say, if they want to negotiate, let them negotiate, but Russia will do so based on its interests. So that is a summary of what Putin said. It was about a 2-minute statement. The entirety of the statement was 2 minutes. And in this statement, Putin provides some historical context, and he gets into World War II and the territory that Poland lost and was incorporated in Ukraine. He also talks about Hungary and these areas that were also incorporated into Ukraine, and he also talks about areas in Germany that then were compensated to Poland. So he gives kind of a bit of a historical context to the important part of his statement, which is that Poland wants to recuperate these lands, and Russia would not interfere, but we will not give up our right as well, which is referencing that Russia is not going to give up their right to incorporate Russian lands, historically Russian lands. And I think that's the definite conclusion that we can take from Putin's statement, which is that whatever lands and territory is historically Russian, that's coming back. Now, in what form is that coming back? Is it going to be part of Russia? Is it going to be part of the Russian Federation or something else? I don't know. But if there's one definite that we can take away from what Putin said yesterday, and what many Russian officials have been saying over the past month, actually, it's that whatever territory is historically Russian in Ukraine, well, it's going to to have those historically friendly Russian ties again. It's going to be part of the Ruski Mir, in other words. Once again, I don't know if that means an annexation, if that means a different country or region that's friendly to Russia and kicks out the Banderites and all of these guys and kicks out the collective West. I don't know. I don't know what that means, but no doubt about it. What Putin meant yesterday is that areas like Odessa, for example, it's coming back to the Russian world, to the Ruski Mir, and all of this hostility that the United States and the collective West has built into these territories. Russia's gonna get rid of it, and these territories are going to come back home to the Russian world. I think that's a definite that you can take away from Putin's statement. The other definite that you can take away from Putin's statement is that Russia's not interested in the west of Ukraine, and they've said this multiple times as well in the past. And Putin said it again yesterday. Russia doesn't care about the west of Ukraine. Now, what that means for the future of the west of Ukraine, I don't know. I believe that in his statement, Putin is telling Poland, we can deal with the west of Ukraine the easy way or the hard way. I think that's kind of the takeaway that I got from Putin's statement. The easy way is we could negotiate it. The hard way is, who knows? Who knows? We could have a border somewhere in the west of Ukraine where Poland is on one side and the Russians are on the other side, and it's Russia facing off against Poland, NATO, and it's a militarized border, and that'll be that. I think that was what he was getting at. That's my take on what Putin said. The two definites from his statement, the two definite conclusions is Ruski Mir, whatever was historically Russian, culturally, historically, language, whatever is connected to Russia, that's coming back to Russia. Everything else, we can deal with it through negotiations, or we can figure out another formula, whatever that other formula may be. So that was the statement from Putin that had everyone talking. But Putin said a lot of other interesting things in his statement. He said that the U.S. over the many years they've actively worked to pull Russia and Europe apart. And he then said that as they were pulling Russia and Europe apart, inside of Ukraine, they were supporting the Bandera ideology, and they made people like Stepan Bandera, they turned them into heroes. And Putin actually admitted that this strategy worked. He actually said, in this sense, they have won over us, if we can say so. So the strategy of separating Russia from Europe worked, and the strategy of building up the NAZI Bandera forces in Ukraine, that also worked. But then Putin went on to say that the new narrative, now what the U.S. is working on, now what they're doing, is they're building up the narrative of the Russian threat, which is that Russia's going to attack NATO. So Putin said that is the new narrative that they're cooking up, and Putin hinted at how that is kind of working as well, because he said that the EU leadership, the current leadership in the European Union, they're spineless and weak-willed. That's what he said, to push back against this Russia is a threat to Europe and wants to attack NATO, this narrative. He said that the EU leadership is spineless and weak-willed. Quite an interesting statement. Let me find the quote here. The weak-willed, spineless generation of today's politicians in Europe cannot stand against this. They can't push back against the separation of Russia and Europe. They can't push back against the NAZI Bandera ideology in Ukraine, and they can't push back against this Russia is a threat to NATO narrative. So that was an interesting statement from Putin. A very interesting statement from Putin. And it makes you think if Poland is to incorporate in one form or another, I don't know how it would be. Let's say they were to incorporate the west of Ukraine into Poland somehow, an autonomous republic, a proper part of Poland. I don't know. Let's just say something like that actually did happen. Poland would have to deal with the Banderites, with the Bandera ideology, which not only hates Russians, the Bandera ideology hates Poles as well. And the interesting part about it, the irony of it all, is that if this was to happen and Poland was to incorporate this western part of Ukraine into Poland, Poland would have to deal with this Bandera ideology, which is a Bandera ideology that Poland itself has been funding and arming over the past 2 years in order to go after Russia. And that ideology would then be turned against Poland, which would be interesting. That would be an interesting turn of events. And then, of course, if this was to happen and Poland was to take the west of Ukraine, then what would Germany say? I can see Germany approaching Poland and saying, "Okay, you've reclaimed your land from post World War II. So isn't it time for you, Poland, to give Germany back the land that was compensated to you?" So a whole bunch of interesting scenarios could unfold from what could be a very real situation that Putin was hinting at. Let's see. Putin also said that right now in the conflict, Russia has the advantage. He said that. He said Russia basically can do whatever it wants on the battlefield right now. If the Russian command says active defense, then active defense. And in this sense, Russia has complete advantage on the battlefield. And then Putin also said that, let me find the quote here, that the myth of the invulnerability of Western military equipment has collapsed. He said that as well. Describing the current advantage of Russian troops, Putin said, "In essence, we are doing what we consider necessary. What we want, wherever commanders decide active defense is best, it takes place. And where it is needed, we improve our positions." He then said that Ukraine has suffered significant casualties and is running out of reserves. He claimed that Kiev's military strategy was motivated by a wish to show to their true masters at least some results of their much-hyped so-called counteroffensive. That's a direct quote. So that's pretty much a summary. That's a summary of what Putin said during this defense ministry meeting. And let's get into what Shoigu, the defense minister, said. Shoigu, he came out with numbers of Ukrainian losses, killed and wounded, and that number is 383,000. That's for the entirety of the special military operation. Shoigu said, since the start of the special operation, the Ukrainian armed forces casualties have exceeded 383,000 service members killed and wounded, 14,000 tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, and armored personnel carriers, 553 warplanes and 259 helicopters, 8,500 artillery planes, and multiple launch rocket systems. So that is Shoigu. 383,000. So that number has a lot of people talking. Once again, killed and wounded. Some people are saying that number is high. Some people are saying that number is very low. my personal take on this is that that number is very conservative. I wouldn't use the word low, I would just use the word conservative. The actual number is probably much higher, but I think the Russian approach is the direct opposite of the Ukraine collective West approach when it comes to these things. The Ukraine collective West approach is to pump things up by 10x. The Russian approach is to push things down, probably by 3x, I would say, if I had to just take a guess. So, yeah, I think that this is a conservative number. So, 383,000. I think Andrei Martyanov, he said it best when he was talking about this number in his video update yesterday, which is that the real number, this is a conservative number, but the real number of casualties, like killed and wounded, we'll find out when everything is wrapped up. When all is said and done and the conflict comes to its conclusion, that's when we'll get a real number as to the casualties. But anyway, that's the number that Shoigu put out there, so that's the number that we'll go with. Shoigu also said, and this is a big shocker, this is a real big shocker, Shoigu said that NATO is involved in the conflict. Shocker. This is what Shoigu said. NATO service members are directly operating air defense systems, tactical ballistic missiles, and multiple launch rocket systems in Ukraine. Shoigu cited radio intercepts featuring English and Polish speakers. And he also said that Western officers are playing an active role in preparing Ukrainian military operations, as well as training troops, both in their home countries and in Ukraine. No big surprise there. But Stoltenberg told us that NATO is not a party to this conflict. Stoltenberg would never lie. Kirby would never lie. Blinken would never lie. They told us not a party to this conflict, NATO. So we have to believe them, right? So obviously Shoigu is not telling the truth. Shoigu's not telling the truth. Come on. There's no English, Polish intercepts that Russia has. Communication intercepts. Are there? Come on now. Radio intercepts. Polish English radio intercepts. Actually, let's go sit in the sun. Let's go sit in the sun over there. So yeah, that was an interesting statement. NATO is not a party to this war. Actually, I think Shoigu even put out some numbers of U.S. and Polish soldiers / mercenaries, whatever you want to call them, that have been annihilated. Obviously, NATO is involved in this conflict. That's no surprise. They've probably been involved in this conflict since Boris Johnson's trip. I bet you from the time when Boris Johnson landed in Kiev and told Elensky to fight on, I bet you that Boris Johnson told Elensky, don't worry about a thing. We'll even send some of our best soldiers into Ukraine to help you guys fight and to help operate the Patriot systems and stuff like that, the high bars and all these things. No shocker there. Shoigu also talked about how the Russian army is, without a doubt, the strongest military in the world right now. Obviously, they have combat experience. And he also talked about the military production of Russia and how it's just booming. Russia's making all kinds of weapons and the collective West cannot keep up. So that was Shoigu. And yesterday we also had Elensky's Q&A. Very much like Putin's Q&A, we had Elensky's Q&A, and Putin's Q&A lasted for 4 hours plus. Elensky's Q&A with the media, taking questions from the media, lasted 2 hours. Now, I don't think Elensky took questions from citizens of Ukraine like Putin took questions from citizens of Russia. But he did have the press and the media in attendance, a huge big screen with the Ukraine flag as well as the EU flag. And it was 2 hours. And Elensky said some interesting things. Some interesting things. Elensky, he wore his best sweatshirt to the event. Can you imagine Elensky's at home? Like he's there with his wife and he's getting ready for the big media Q&A, the big event. And he's like opening up his closet and he's going, "Hey, Olena, what should I wear to this Q&A? Should I wear my green or my dark green?" The dark green. It's an important event. Wear the dark green sweatshirt. So Elensky gave his Q&A. And let's see here. NATO, he was asked about NATO, and Elensky admitted that there's no invitation to NATO. That's what he said. There is no invitation to NATO. Let's imagine that part of Ukraine will be in NATO. These are high risks. This means that Putin will enter and there will be a war with NATO. Is partial accession to NATO even possible? We are not invited to NATO, and signals on the topic of partial participation are nonsense. We have never received such an offer from partners. I can't imagine how this could happen. So that's Elensky pouring cold water on Ukraine and NATO. And then Elensky was asked about his relationship with Zelensky, and Elensky said that he and the General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces are responsible for the situation on the battlefield. There are many issues to address there. I'm waiting for concrete things on the battlefield. There's a strategy, good. I want to see the details. I think that's fair. So basically, Elensky was saying that all of the tension between him and Zelensky is just overblown. It's overdone. And Elensky, he's like, look, they have battle plans. I want to see those battle plans. I think I have the right to see those plans and to see their strategy and to question it. So that's what he said when he was asked about his relationship with Zelensky. And that then led to Elensky talking about mobilization and the plan from the Ukraine military to mobilize 450 to 500,000 people. The military proposed mobilizing an additional 450 to 500,000 people. Regarding people, I need something more specific. What will happen to a million-strong Ukrainian army? Very strong, I believe. We cannot lose our stability and potential, but we need justice. And regarding finances, mobilization in this format will cost Ukraine an additional 500 billion hryvnias, or $13.4 billion. So basically, Elensky's like, look, Zelensky, the military, they came to me with a plan to mobilize an additional 500,000 people. And I told them, we need money. We need money. That's what he's saying. It's going to cost us $13.4 billion. Let's get the money first, and then we can begin to mobilize. If they have the people to mobilize. Makes you wonder where Where did the first 500,000 soldiers go? Makes you wonder, huh? So, yeah, that's what he said about mobilization. What else? Oh, Elensky then said that Russia has made no military gains in 2023. No military gains. Russia didn't do anything in 2023. Then why do you need to mobilize? If Russia made no gains in 2023, if Russia essentially did nothing in 2023, then why do you need to mobilize? Why do you need 61 billion? You know? Anyway, he said that as well, forgetting about Bakhmut and Soledar. And anyway, who wants to talk about that? Elensky to this day still hasn't admitted that Bakhmut fell to the Russians. So anyway, he also said that Ukraine's GDP grew by 5%. An interesting statement. Ukraine's GDP grew by 5%. Yeah, United States gives us $200 billion. Our GDP grows by 5%. It's very simple. He also said that he has faith in the United States. I wonder if I have this quote. Yeah, he said that he has faith in the U.S. He said, I have faith in the United States, and the U.S. won't let us down. One second, I want to find this quote here. I'm confident the U.S. will not betray us. Oof, Elensky. Oh boy. I'm confident the U.S. will not betray us. Ah, boy, oh boy. All right, I think that's everything. Oh, he also talked about Orban. He was asked about his meeting with Orban in Argentina. And Elensky said that he basically asked Orban to give him one reason, just one, just give me one reason why Ukraine doesn't belong in the European Union. And then he invited Orban to Kiev, and Orban refused. Orban's not going to become the latest victim of the Elensky curse. That's for sure. You know, Orban's like, I'm not going to Kiev. The last thing I need is the Elensky curse to hit me. Elensky, meanwhile, he's telling Ursula, and Borrell, don't worry, I'll take care of Orban with the Elensky curse. Don't worry, I'll invite him to Kiev. He shakes my hand. Orban gone. But it didn't work. It didn't work. You know, Ursula called Elensky and she's like, did Orban accept your invitation to Kiev? And Elensky's like, no, he refused. And Ursula's like, damn it. Damn it. So that was Elensky's Q&A. That was his Q&A. And in the United States, we had the State Department spokesman. What's the guy's name? Matthew Miller. He was asked by the media what's going on with Ukraine funding, and Miller was like, "Look, we're down to our last billion to give to Ukraine. Once we give them our last billion at the end of this month, that is it." And Miller said that for Ukraine and for the Elensky regime, there is no magic pot of money. He's used that line before, but he said it again. There is no magic pot of money. He told the media that they should ask Congress about funding for Ukraine, because for the State Department, it's Congress that is the roadblock for more money to Project Ukraine. No magic pot. They like that word. No magic pot for Ukraine. So if Elensky was listening to that press conference, he was probably like, pot? Magic pot? I don't like pot. I like the other stuff that Hunter likes. I don't need magic pot. I need magic other things. You know, the stuff that Hunter likes to do. Magic pot. Who wants magic pot? So Arestovich, he put out a statement, and he said that, let me find it here. He said, I promised Elensky not to interfere, but lately his actions defy sound logic. I have a plan to stop the bloodshed on Ukrainian soil. My goal is not to make money from this war, as the president's office is doing now. We will definitely succeed. I receive support from influential generals of the armed forces of Ukraine. A small spoiler, in early 2024, I will provide an information bomb that will open your eyes to who Vladimir Alexandrovich Zelensky really is. Oof. Wow. They used to be best friends. Now they're enemies. That sounds like a coup. Them sound like coup words, if I ever heard coup words coming from Arestovich. A Maidan number 3 coming from Arestovich. 2024 is going to be an interesting year. And that brings us to the big news of yesterday from the United States, which is that Trump was removed from the 2024 ballot by the Supreme Court of Colorado. Let's see, what does Zero Hedge say here? The Colorado Supreme Court has disqualified Donald Trump from Colorado's 2024 presidential election ballot, and in a 4-3 ruling has effectively blocked Trump from seeking the presidency because of his role in the January 6th Capitol attack, citing the post-Civil War era 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution that bans insurrectionists from holding public office. The Colorado case was the first constitutional challenge to Trump's 2024 run to go through a full trial. What ridiculous banana republic stuff is this? Oh, man. Nonsense. This is all nonsense. So from what I understand, even the Colorado Supreme Court is going to wait for this to go to the Supreme Court before any of this actually is enacted. So they even know that this ruling is a bunch of BS. And obviously, I should hope, obviously, the Supreme Court is going to knock this thing down, and they're going to say this is nonsense and this is ridiculous. So why does Colorado do this? Why are they doing this? Here's a tweet from Robert Barnes. There is no historical parallel, legal precedent, or constitutional support for the all-Democrat Colorado Supreme Court to prohibit voters from choosing whom they want for president by ballot. Barring Trump, will be up to SCOTUS to stop this third world style election manipulation. So why is the Colorado Supreme Court engaging in such nonsense? My opinion, narrative creation, narrative construction. That's what I think this is all about. They know that this is nonsense, but they now want to give the Democrats and all of the people that have Trump derangement syndrome, orange man bad, they want to give them another big talking point. Orange man bad, orange man evil. Trump has been indicted 568 times. He's an insurrectionist, and he was also removed from the Colorado ballot for 2024. And I imagine other states will try to do the same. Perhaps other states will try to do the same. We'll see. But this just gives them another talking point. It gives the collective West media another talking point. Morning Joe and Mika, they can talk about this when they do their little show. Trump was removed from the Colorado ballot. How can anyone vote for him for president? He's an insurrectionist. He's been indicted 6,024 times. You know, that's what this is all about. This is nonsense. It's narrative creation, narrative construction. This is like the siege of Kiev. This is like the siege of Kiev, or Russia's running out of weapons. The same exact thing. The globalists, the deep state, they create these narratives. And sometimes, the interesting part is that sometimes when they create these narratives, sometimes the people act on these narratives and they actually become true. You know, like Maidan, 2014. They actually got people out onto the streets in the belief that Ukraine was being blocked from entering the European Union and that life was going to be fantastic under the European Union. And they actually got people upset with Yanukovych, and it actually worked. So sometimes the narrative construction actually works. It manifests itself into reality. But most of the times it's just fiction. Like the siege of Kiev, it's fiction. But there are many people, including the collective West media, that feed into this narrative construction, and there are a lot of people that actually buy into this narrative construction. So that's what they're doing here. That's exactly what they're doing. So Vivek Ramaswamy, he put out a tweet and he said, "I pledge to withdraw from the Colorado GOP primary ballot until Trump is also allowed to be on the ballot. And I demand that DeSantis, Christie, and Haley do the same immediately, or else they are tacitly endorsing this illegal maneuver, which will have disastrous consequences for our country." Well, I commend Vivek, but we all know that Haley and DeSantis and Christie, this is the only reason they're staying in this race, is because they were promised that Trump was going to be removed somehow. You know, that's the meeting that they had. We all know that Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer and all these guys, they sat down with Haley and with DeSantis and Christie, and they told them, just be patient, stay in this race, and we'll find a way to deal with the orange man. So I commend Vivek, but we all know that this is exactly what Haley and Christie and DeSantis have been waiting for. Anyway, Robert Kennedy Jr., he said that Trump blocked from the ballot in Colorado. When a court in another country disqualifies an opposition candidate from running, we say that's not a real democracy. Now it's happening here. Exactly right. Elon Musk said these actions will have the opposite effect of what was intended. That's exactly right. Marco Rubio said the U.S. has put sanctions on other countries for doing exactly what the Colorado Supreme Court has done today. That is exactly right. And Bukele said the United States has lost its ability to lecture any other country about democracy. Also right. These actions are going to have the exact reverse outcome than what they're hoping for. Trump's going to become even more popular with this ruling, even more popular. But they have no reverse gear. They cannot help themselves. So we have news. We'll wrap up this video now. We have news from Axios that Netanyahu is pushing for a 1-week ceasefire in Gaza, in Israel, in order to release the remaining hostages. I talked about this in a video I did a couple of weeks ago, that Netanyahu sent Mossad agents to Qatar in order to try and broker some sort of a ceasefire to release hostages. This is after the IDF shot 3 Israeli hostages. They shot them, thinking that they were Hamas or something like that. But after this event, took place and protests hit the streets in Israel, Netanyahu sent Mossad agents to Qatar in order to speak with the Qataris, who liaise with Hamas in order to try and get another ceasefire, a 1-week ceasefire. So that's an interesting piece of news. And finally, we have reports that the U.S., according to Bloomberg, is weighing whether to attack Houthi rebels in Yemen. The question is whether to hit militant group in its base in Yemen. Saudis are among those worried about provoking a wider war. Yep. We're starting to talk about the attacks on Yemen. Military strikes on Yemen, and Sky News, they took things further. The UK Sky News said that the US will have to attack Iran. Vice Marshal of the British Air Force military expert Sean Bell stated this on the TV channel. If the West wants to resume shipping in the Red Sea, it has no other choice. The United States will have to attack Iran. So, from the Red Sea to Yemen to now Iran. And we all can see where this is going. All right, I need to wrap this up. I was going to say something about Epstein and the 108 names that are going to be released from his file, his court case. You know, this is going to be names including journalists and investigators and other people involved. There's not going to be a list of all the people that were hanging out on his island. It's going to be a list of all kinds of other people as well. So I'm not expecting much, but we'll see. We'll see what will happen when this list is released. And finally, let's do a clown world. Vovan and Lexis, they did it again, this time with the Irish Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar. They called him up and they pretended to be African officials. It's either Poroshenko now or African officials. Anyway, they pretended to be African officials speaking English with a Russian accent, but Varadkar, he fell for it. And they asked him some interesting questions. And the interesting part, I believe one of the interesting parts of the conversation was when Varadkar said that Ukraine is not going to be entering the EU anytime soon. He said that accession talks tend to take a long time. He said that it took Ireland 20 years from the beginning of accession talks to actually enter the European Union. He said Poland, it took the same amount of time. And yeah, that was it. It's amazing that they fall for this. Every time they fall for this. It's either Poroshenko or it's African officials. Boy, the leadership in the European Union, they're pretty dense, aren't they? They are pretty dense. Anyway, the Telegraph, they put out an article with the title, "Number of Troops in the British Armed Forces Falls to Record Low." Say it ain't so. Say it ain't so. And all this time, I thought that the Russian military was at an all-time low. Now you have the Telegraph telling us that it's actually the British military that is at an all-time low. You see, narrative creation, narrative construction. Trump removed from the ballot in Colorado. That's their secret weapon, is narrative creation. And they bet on the fact that people are going to buy into it and believe it. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop. 20% off. Use the code TheDuran20. Take care.